Kuzy back in the mix versus Dallas, and the latest on TJ Oshie next on this edition of Locked On Capitals.
Your Locked On Capitals, your daily podcast on the Washington Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Well, hello and welcome into this edition of Locked On Capitals. I'm so glad you decided to join me today. As always, this podcast is free and available on all the major platforms, including the SiriusXM app and on YouTube. And I want to thank you for making this your first listen each and every day. My name is Dan Holme. You can find me on Twitter. It's at DanCaps218. You can find the show on Twitter. It's at Locked On Caps. And the best way that you can help grow the show is to subscribe to Locked On Capitals on YouTube and comment anything down below. I would love to talk Capitals hockey with you one-on-one, and we can do that on subtext. Just check the show description for more details. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. That's $150 if your team wins. Visit FanDuel.com/locked on to get started. So in this edition of Locked On Capitals, we talk about Evgeny Kuznetsov as he will be back in the mix. Expect him to see him in the game versus Dallas Thursday night. Is he a changed man? We'll talk about that in the show. A little bit later, we will have your comments. Ultimately, I love to hear from you. You know my thoughts on the Capitals. What are your comments on Kuzy, on Miroshnichenko? We'll talk about that. And a little bit later, we will have the very latest on TJ Oshie and Max Pacioretty. But just to get it going here, we do know that Evgeny Kuznetsov was benched in this last game, or a healthy scratch, shall we say. And is he a changed man from this? Was it the right thing to do, considering that the Capitals had one of their worst losses in years? It is an interesting thing. I think it was to send a message to Kuzy that, you need to start playing better. But what is one of the things that I know about him is that he doesn't really take criticism that well. And I know what you're going to say. No one takes criticism well. He just seemed a little bit better or bitter about it. But one of the things that was said in an interview with him today is that he understands why it was done. He just doesn't think he deserved it. And that he wants to prove everyone that's talking poorly about him wrong, that he is that player. And ultimately, I think that that's what everyone's hoping for. I don't think that anyone has any, ill feelings towards Evgeny Kuznetsov. I just think that they're disappointed with how he's playing. But it is a question worth noting was it worth benching Kuzy considering the Caps lost 6-0 to the Coyotes? One of the worst losses that I can recall, and one of the worst first periods that I can recall in quite some time. Spencer Carbery says, I feel like he was okay, but not playing the level he's capable of. Felt like he was doing enough, and we were winning games. So I think that for the longest time, we were discontent with Evgeny Kuznetsov. It was just getting swept under the rug because the Capitals were winning games. And when you're winning, sometimes you forget about things that aren't, firing on all cylinders, the power play, or if Evgeny Kuznetsov not playing 100%. So when the Capitals started playing poorly, a lot of that started to come into focus. And I think that it was kind of frustration on the part of Spencer Carbery, kind of boiling over, like, this guy is just not getting it. I think that he was playing poorly the entire game. And then there was that penalty late in the game where he was in the penalty box for some unnecessary roughing, that kind of thing. It's disappointing, he said, but you've got to accept sometimes and just trust the process, Kuzy says. And I feel like there is a lot more into that. That was a bad day and a bad finish over there. So it's just trying to help me, but eventually it was a bad result. I need to play hockey better in every area, he said, later adding, I feel like we've been missing those 15 to 20 points by me, and that's 20 goals If we could score those 20 goals, we'd probably be top 10 in the league in regard to scoring. So that's what we're missing. So a bit of accountability on the part of Evgeny Kuznetsov. And I like that. I don't like when people start pointing fingers like, well, I'm not playing well, but neither is that guy. So him kind of holding himself accountable, I think, is refreshing in a lot of ways. And, when I talk about him on the show, it's not like I ever have anything against Kuznetsov. I like him as a player. I just think that what people don't like about him is that he is not living up to what his perceived potential is. He did say, however, he doesn't hold it against Carbery and knows he needs to play better. And he spoke well of Spencer Carbery, saying that he is, the perfect guy, the perfect coach right now for this team, and that he's not holding it against him. He just didn't necessarily agree with being benched, but he's going to trust the process, like he says. He was at practice Wednesday with a chip on his shoulder and something to prove. For me, I say go ahead and prove it, and you won't be in this situation in the future. So, to go into practice, he was at practice today, and Spencer Carbery was saying he was looking forward, and he said that he looked, improved over the last time that he saw him play, and that's all anyone wants. I don't think you need to prove anyone wrong. I think you need to just live up to your potential. Hold yourself accountable. I don't think that anyone has it out for Evgeny Kuznetsov. Kuznetsov was on a line with Hendrix Lapierre and Matthew Phillips, but don't read too much into that as it's subject to change. And what I'm talking about was what was going on at practice today. He was skating with Hendrix Lapierre and Matthew Phillips. Milano was the odd man out in today's practice, but it is my belief it will be Phillips as he was getting in extra work after practice. But Sonny Milano is also a guy that kind of needs to step it up a little bit as well. He has shown flashes of greatness this season, but much like a lot of other Capitals players, not sustainable consistency, not sustainable goal scoring, that kind of thing. So it's not just a Kuzy thing. It's not just a Sonny Milano thing. It's not, a Phillips thing. It's kind of a broad spectrum thing on this team where they're not playing as well as they should. And if you're an everydayer of the show, I spoke about yesterday that potentially maybe they have that talent down in Hershey. At what point are they going to say, let's give even Miroshnichenko his opportunity. Let's give Ethan Frank his opportunity. Joe Snively, Pierre Dubé. Well, I mean, why not? And ultimately, how far are we going to let this go before they give them an opportunity? And I understand it was just a 2-game losing streak, but what happens if they fall to Dallas? And then let's say they fall to New York on Saturday. At what point are you going to start to say something needs to change? Are you going to wait till you're all the way to the bottom of the Metro? And I'm not trying to be this panic person like, oh, it's the end of the world because they lost 2 games. But if you are a fan of this team and you watch all of the games, then this team has been inconsistent. Alex Ovechkin has been inconsistent. There are issues aplenty on this team, and I'm not the kind of guy that is just like, well, it's still early in the season. It's not that early in the season anymore, and these things need to be addressed. We still don't have, a definitive timeline when Pacioretty is going to come back. We'll talk about that in the next segment, but it is a bit worrisome for me as this team struggles with consistency. Some of the bright spots on this team right now is Charlie Lindgren. When he's healthy and playing well, he's been playing really well. And the bottom 6, in general has been playing pretty well. It was kind of lacking in the last couple of games as well, but it is just trying to cherry pick and find the good things. And much like Spencer Carbery said that Kuzy's play was kind of swept under the rug when the team was winning, don't sweep things under the rug. Just because you're winning doesn't mean that winning is sustainable. We want to keep the winning going. We want the power play to be engaged. We want Evgeny Kuznetsov to be engaged. In order for this team to have any hopes of being successful, winning the Metro or just making it to the playoffs period, or dare I say a Stanley Cup, Those are the kind of things that you're going to have to do. It's going to be an interesting test for this team as they take on the Dallas Stars. Is Kuzy a changed man tomorrow as well? Is he going to step up? Is this team going to step up against the Stars? Or is it going to be a continued slide? I'm really hoping that's not the case. I hope that, it was just a couple game blip and the Caps hope to turn it around. But, kind of reflecting back on that West Coast trip, I'm not feeling real positive. I was feeling pretty positive when they took down the Kings and the Ducks, but a lot of, the other areas were a bit rough. This team needs to clean up a lot of areas on the ice if they want to win. And Alex Ovechkin, again, I'm still really worried about him, and I'm wondering what's going on. Let's hope they can turn it around and pick up a big win tomorrow, Thursday evening, versus Dallas. All right, so coming up here after the break, I will give you the very latest on TJ Oshie and Max Pacioretty. When can we expect to see them? I'll talk about that coming up. I know we come to sports to escape from some of the crazy realities of life, but can we just talk for a minute about preparing for real life? According to the FDA, pharmacies are running out of antibiotics like amoxicillin right in the middle of the worst flu season in over a decade. That is scary. I can't imagine a more helpless feeling than, say a significant loved one or one of my kids got sick while a supply chain issue kept them from a life saving medicine they needed. Thankfully, we'll be okay thanks to Jace Medical. The Jace case is a pack of 5 different antibiotics to treat a long list of bacterial illness, including UTIs, respiratory infections, sinusitis, skin infections, among other. The stuff could happen to any one of us, and sometimes life throws you curveballs. So visit jacemedical.com and complete your physician encounter. It will be reviewed by a board-certified physician, and your medications will be dispensed by a licensed pharmacy at a fraction of the regular cost. It's a win-win if you ask me. It's never been more important to be prepared than today. So go to jacemedical.com and use offer code locked on to get $20 off your order. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. All right, welcome back into this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So we know that TJ Oshie has been missing some time with injury, and we know that Max Pacioretty is ramping up to coming to this team and hopefully helping contribute in their effort to scoring goals. What is some of the things that we know about Max Pacioretty is that 6 different times in his career, he has scored 30 goals. That's a pretty big plus if you ask me, but we also know that his last 2 seasons that he's played, he's had Achilles issues. So a bit of a plus, a little bit of a concern. Hopefully it's something in the middle. But ultimately, I'm excited about the prospect, but also TJ Oshie returning to the mix because I think they play that much better. But as far as Max Pacioretty and TJ Oshie are concerned, Max still has a ways to go. There is still no definite, date as far as when we can expect to see him on this team. If we remember in earlier interviews, he says, I have a couple dates circled that only me and my wife know. And no, to the media, I'm not going to tell you what those dates are because I don't want to have to set myself up for failure saying I said December 15th and December 15th goes past. I don't look like I let anyone down. So the last that we heard, Max Pacioretty does have some dates that he would like to return. If certain markers are meant, I'm sure that he has to meet with his physicians and they have to approve. They have to meet with the Capitals medical staff. They have to approve. it's all going through a process. And I don't think there's anyone that's looking forward to him making his start with this team. I was going to say return, but he hasn't really played with this team yet, other than, briefly on the ice at practice. But no one is looking forward to seeing him in the Capitals lineup more than me and you Capitals fans out there, to see, is he going to be one of the missing pieces to help the Capitals start scoring more goals? This team is struggling in that department so far. It is Strome and Wilson who are getting it done, but they're not getting it done quite to the level that it's been done in previous years. So there is a bit of concern. While the Caps were on a 5-game road trip, TJ Oshie and Max Pacioretty were on the ice with skills coach Kenny McLuhan, who stays behind to skate with injured players. So it does appear that TJ Oshie is ramping up and getting ready to return. Everything that I have read and the different press, different interviews with the players and the head coach seem to indicate that he will not be good to go against Dallas, but he should be available to the Capitals for him to be back in the lineup versus the New York Rangers this weekend. So that is exciting. And, I think the Capitals play better when TJ Oshie is in the mix. I know that he has been a bit snake bitten as far as his, efforts for scoring goals, but he is a playmaker and always kind of puts himself in a position to succeed and help his fellow teammates succeed. So it's always good to see him in the lineup. Oshie was back with the main group in a non-contact jersey, a promising sign that after the fact that he missed the 5-game road trip out west. He did say that he hates not being able to wear the non-contact jersey. He said it sucks, to be honest. You just don't get a lot of action out there, which is probably the point of it. But it's to get a normal color tomorrow and on Friday and see where we can go. So tomorrow, Thursday, I guess depending on when you're listening to this, Thursday is when he should get his regular color jersey, and he should be full go to see if he's going to be good to go or not. According to what was written here, it is going to be either Thursday or Friday, but it does appear that he should be ready to rejoin the Capitals this weekend versus the Rangers. It's going to be a tough test for this team. Make no mistake about it. The Rangers, who are in first place in the Metro Division. Yes, that's Peter Laviolette's Rangers in first place in the Metro against a scrappy Capitals team that is looking to prove itself. There's times that they'll go on a couple game winning streak after taking down a big opponent, see the Kings, and then, they took down the Ducks, but then all of a sudden they fall and they lose to Vegas and to the Coyotes. So there are things that are concerning. This isn't a deplorable Capitals team by any stretch of the imagination. It's just a team that still needs work. And certain things are coming into focus. The age of this team, a lot of NHL insiders are mentioning that. They're saying, this team is good, but they're having a hard time keeping pace with some of the young teams that are out there. And age, sometimes that means, you're going to slow down a little bit. I know that there has been a bit of a youth infusion this year in the form of Connor McMichael, Hendrix Lapierre, Beck Malenstein, those types of players, but they need more than that. And I don't think that it's going to fix what ails this team if you plug in just a ton of young players. But I do think it would be a worthwhile thing to see what Ethan Frank has, being that he's lighting it up in Hershey. What does Scarboza have? What does Joe Snively have? What does Pierrick Dubé have? It wouldn't really hurt to try it out. And, I think that these next couple games here are going to be interesting. Say for some reason that the Capitals do fall to Dallas. Say they fall to the Rangers. Say they lose both of those games, then I think it's full go for me, if I was the GM, the head coach, to say, let's try something different. Obviously, this isn't working. We don't have any, trades in the works that we know of right now. I mean, sometimes those things kind of just come out of left field, but as everything that I've heard right now, and, I pay close attention to this team, I've heard nothing about any trades being imminent. I know that it was said, Elliot Friedman said that there was talk of a trade between Columbus, but oftentimes Elliot Friedman just likes to throw things into the wind and see if anything happens. And I'm not saying that he didn't hear something, but it doesn't appear that anything is real close. So if there isn't anything real close, then I think at some point it's only going to make sense to let's give one of these guys down in Hershey their opportunity. If it's even Miroshnichenko or, like I said, Ethan Frank, something like that, something has got to jumpstart this team if the roster right now, the big team, the Capitals, is not getting it done, something must change. So it's either going to be a big move outside of the organization. It's going to be the return of Max Pacioretty. It's going to be the return of TJ Oshie. I don't really care what the combination is, as long as it means the Capitals winning more games and no more losing games 6-0. Unacceptable. Unacceptable for this team. And, I don't mean to rub salt in wounds here, but it is difficult to watch a team that has shown promise. And again, this is not the Coyotes team of old, but we're hoping that with Oshie back in the lineup and at some point, hopefully somewhat soon, Max Pacioretty, hopefully there are steps in improvement. Also of note is that Nick Backstrom is still with the team. He is still no closer to coming back as he took stepped away from hockey indefinitely, but he still is with the team at MedStar. So he's still plugged in the, outside of chance that he comes back to this team, which I really don't see happening, that hopefully some combination, like I said, whether it's Max Pacioretty, Oshie, players in Hershey, or a trade, something has got to change so this team can start winning games once again. All right, so coming up here after the break, we will talk about your comments. You know what my comments are on the Capitals, but I love to hear your comments on the Capitals, and we'll get to those coming up. As the weather gets colder, the NFL offers stay hot on FanDuel. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. That's $150 if your team wins. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in on the action. The app is so easy to use, and there's a wide range of betting options, including spreads, player props, over-unders, and more. And let me tell you something, guys. If you're watching a Commanders game, if you're watching a Wizards game, if you're watching a Capitals game and maybe it's not going quite the way you wanted to, open up the FanDuel app, put a little bit of money on the game. It makes watching the games that much more exciting. So visit fanduel.com/locked on and kick off the NFL season. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. All right, welcome back into this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So on a five nights a week, 5 days a week, I come to you guys talking about Capitals news. You hear my thoughts on the Capitals, whether it is a game breakdown, whether it's talking about Kuzy, injured players, trades, that kind of thing. You know what my thoughts are. But I find it refreshing and I look forward to hearing your comments. So here were some comments that we received on YouTube as far as Kuznetsov and Ivan Miroshnichenko. And what do you all think? So Javi Ronaldo says here, I think it's time to call him up. He's talking about Miroshnichenko. Give him 3 to 4 games. He can play 9 this season and still get an extra year on his entry-level contract. But honestly, if he comes up and kills it, he should be left up here. He's had the time to adjust to the North American game. I agree with you, Javi Ronaldo. I do think that this is a good time to try it out. And ultimately, what do the Capitals have to lose? I think that there are players that aren't living up to potential. So if Matthew Phillips is taken out of the equation, then why not insert someone like an Ivan Miroshnichenko or an Ethan Frank? So I agree with your assessment there. Red Wings 0142 says Snively, Frank, Miro, give one of them a chance. I agree. Why not give one of them a chance? And that's kind of what we've been talking about in this episode and yesterday, that it's time to see if we can get things going here. So that is the hope out there. Trevor Jones says Miro is not ready. He needs a full AHL season to round out his game. I'm excited about him too, but it would be irresponsible to rush him. He's going to be an elite player for us one day. Let's not rush it and screw it up. I can see where you're coming from on that, Trevor Jones. I think that, that there is the potential of that happening, but I think that just giving him a sample, kind of like what Javi Ronaldo was talking about there, that just give him a taste, see what he does. I don't want this team to slide too far down the Metro division. So for me, I don't think that it can really hurt anything. So Kid T 3068 says the positive side to 5 goals in one period against you since 2017 is the year after. And they're referencing the fact that the Capitals won the Stanley Cup in 2018. Listen, Kid T 3068, I hope you are right. That's what I think everyone hopes for, is that they can get more scoring. Javier Ronaldo also says, is it time to talk about the GM/BM's job? I don't necessarily think the case. I think that Brian McLuhan is doing what he can do. There are certain restrictions on this team, and I know that people think that if things aren't working, that we'll just trade all these players, and we're going to pick up Nylander, and we're going to pick up all these big name guys, and it's going to fix the team. It's not as easy as that. And at the end of the day, I think that Brian McLuhan is doing what he can do. He hasn't made any crazy trades thus far. And I think that, the additions of Pacioretty and Joel Edmondson in the offseason, those were wise moves. Why? Joel Edmondson is that sturdy, tough defender that the Capitals were looking for, and Montreal retained 50% of his salary. Max Pacioretty, $2 million plus $2 million in incentives, 6 times in his career, 30 goals. He's got those couple, Achilles issues, but like I've said on this show before, the Capitals would have never got him for $2 million plus $2 million if he had not had those issues. They could not have afforded him. So another comment here from Butcher P2286. Is it just me, or did the defense look better without Faravari? I'm a huge fan of Marty, but the defense was clicking with him on IR. I don't know. Maybe that's just me. Carlson hasn't looked good this road trip. Sandini isn't playing to his potential. Here's hoping for a solid bounce back and some fight in this team to not just give up on the season. And I guess I haven't thought too much about Faravari being out of the lineup, and if they played better. I guess what I would say is that I did notice some gaffes with the defense, the blue line in the last game in particular. John Carlson coughing up the puck. It just seemed like this team was back on its heels and didn't really have an answer for what the Coyotes were throwing at the Capitals. But hopefully, the defense turns it around, but also the offense. And, I've heard these comments on Twitter and YouTube saying, well, it's easy to blame. And I think this is the next comment coming up here, is that it's easy to blame Kemper, or it's easy to blame Lindgren, but they didn't score any goals. But with that said, the goalie still allowed 6 goals. And I understand that the defense wasn't necessarily up to the task at hand either. Let's, kind of settle it in the middle here, say they should score more goals, and the defense and the goaltending should be more stout. Javier Ronaldo says here, blame Kemper all you want, but the skaters have to take the blame for that mess. How many goals did they score? Oh, that's right, a big fat 0. Can't blame a goalie for a loss when your team doesn't score. I have to say it, though, Carbery has to show some guts and declare Charlie the number 1. It's clear at this point Kemper just isn't doing well. That's what I've said. I agree with your assessment, Javier Ronaldo. I do think that that's the case, that Lindgren is the number 1. But, you got to consider that Charlie Lindgren wasn't perfect in that game either. And I'm not putting the blame squarely on the goalie's shoulders. But with that being said, 6 goals did go in. And I understand there were breakdowns in the defense, but there were still goalies in the net. And they had to save some of those. I think that it got out of hand in a hurry. I think especially in Darcy Kemper's case, he was rattled in a hurry and had a hard time focusing himself. It's like, if something really bad happens and you have to get it back together again in a hurry, sometimes you struggle. And I'll just talk about my personal life here for a moment, as I used to be a drummer in a band. And one of the things that would happen is if I was playing my part in a song and I screwed it up, sometimes, and it's noticeable if you're playing in a concert and people are watching you and the drummer is very pronounced. So if you make a mistake, it's noticeable. Did I make some mistakes here and there? Absolutely. And it was noticeable. It's hard to get it together, because in your mind, you're like, everyone just, heard and they saw me screw that up. But then you have to just kind of bring it in a hurry before it gets out of hand, because I've seen other people, other bands in my case, where it just got worse from there, and they never got it back together. So I'm just trying to make an analogy here that sometimes when you make errors, even at the professional level, like Darcy Kemper, sometimes it's hard to refocus. I think that, perhaps Spencer Carbery could have used a timeout or two to help, slow down the game a little bit there. But ultimately, I am not putting this all on Kemper. I think he's a great goalie. I still do think, I agree with your assessment, Javi Ronaldo, that Charlie is the number one. But again, I don't want to get too much into number ones and number twos as far as goalies are concerned. I want the goalie, whoever it might be, the hot hand. So if it's Charlie Lindgren, who's playing really well, why would you pull him out just because Kemper's your number one, and the same goes vice versa? It makes no sense. I think you have to start taking titles and throw those in the garbage. All right, listen, I want to thank you so much for joining me on this edition of Locked On Capitals, your only daily year-round podcast covering the Washington Capitals. And I want to thank all of you that listen on the audio side and watch this on YouTube as well. You are what makes this show, this podcast, this YouTube channel successful. And by all means, tell your friends about it. If you're listening to this on an audio podcast, go over to YouTube. It's stock on most every cell phone. And even if you listen to this show 9 times out of 10, just go over to YouTube, Locked On Capitals, and hit subscribe. It really helps grow the channel. Our goal is to make it to 1,000 subscribers sooner than later, but hopefully by the end of the season. I want to think there's been a big influx as of late as far as subscribers, and thank you guys so much. It means a lot to me that you're supporting this show. And again, tell your friends. And if you're listening on the audio side, again, most phones come with a YouTube on them. Just go over there, hit subscribe. Even if you never watch it on there, say you're just keep listening to it on your podcatcher of choice, but just help out the show in that regard. I would really appreciate it. All right, when you're done here, head on over to Locked On's first ever national streaming channel. That's right. It's pretty cool. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with local experts of Locked On. So go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. All right. Once again, I want to thank you for joining me on this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name is Dan Holme, and I'll talk to you again next time.